West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
To politics now, where Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney is standing strong against potential retaliation from her own party for being a Republican. It comes after her continued criticism of former President Trump's false claims that the 2020 election was stolen from him. GOP leadership has recently warned the Wyoming Congresswoman that her remarks are a distraction amid attempts to unite the fractured party. Really?
What
her remarks?
That
You mean
he's lying?
Wait, I just want to hold on.
About democracy?
Let me just ask a question. First of all, you have Liz Cheney, and then you have the insurrection. What do you think is more of a distraction? Liz Cheney saying the right thing, being a Republican and sticking to her conservative beliefs as a true Republican, or hundreds, maybe even thousands of people assaulting our Capitol, killing people, using the American flag to torture Capitol cops, running around in the halls screaming, "Where's Nancy Pelosi and Mike Pence?" They had a noose.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I would be distracted by that if I were a Republican who cared about my party and cared about my country.
Well, not Ron Johnson.
These are the most dishonest people I've ever seen in politics. Honestly.
Oh, there's not really a close,
that's saying a lot.
There's not really a close second to that.
Well,
and
that's where
the
we are.
lies, unfortunately, that Kevin McCarthy called out. Kevin McCarthy called out Donald Trump several weeks ago or several months ago, and then backed down. Lindsey Graham called out Donald Trump. And then backed down because they're cowards. And it just, Mika, it just continues. And the thing is, it'd be one thing if Donald Trump stopped spreading the big lie. It would be one thing if he stopped trying to undermine American democracy. It would be one thing if he stopped
He's not going to do that.
Trying to thwart the rule of law. Ignoring one federal judge after another federal judge after another federal judge after another federal judge, saying there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud that would have any impact in the outcome of the election. But Mika, he just continues. He keeps spreading the big lie.
Well, he's using his little voice on his little stages with his little band going ba-dum-bump whenever he says something he thinks is interesting. He also has press releases, and Trump yesterday again called the 2020 election fraudulent, this time trying to co-opt the term the big lie for himself. But Cheney was having none of it. Who would? Tweeting in response, quote, "The 2020 presidential election was not stolen. Anyone who claims it was is spreading the big lie, turning their back on the rule of law and poisoning our democratic system." That is the most boring statement. It is so true.
Boringly
it is
true.
so unbelievably just plain and simple.
There's nothing controversial about it, Willie. And what Liz Cheney just said right there, I find it hard to believe that any organization that calls itself a news organization would ever allow anyone who voted to overturn the election results on January the 6th would ever let them on without asking the first question. Right. Do you think the 2020 election was stolen? Do you think Joe Biden is the rightful president and was legally elected president of the United States? And if any news organization doesn't ask everyone that voted to undermine American democracy on January the 6th and continue to spread the big lie, then they are absolutely shameless and are no news organization at all. And yes, and they are complicit. Because this is an ongoing threat to American democracy. I'd love to say, hey, that happened January the 6th. It's over. And you know what? We learned our lessons, and let's be more prepared moving forward. We can't do that because there are like 175, 180 people still roaming around the halls of Congress who spread that big lie and continue taking that big lie out across America and spreading that big lie. Every bit as much of a lie as other monstrous big lies throughout history. Every bit as much of a big lie if you love American democracy, if you cherish Madisonian democracy. It's every bit as much of a big lie, every bit as much as separated from truth. If you are American who loves this country, loves Madisonian democracy, and loves the United States Constitution.
Yeah, those members of Congress, by the way, do appear on those shows all the time, and they are not asked that question. You're right that they should be, and if they ever are asked, they say, we're just asking questions. We have a right to know, don't we? Well, those questions were asked before courts. They were asked before election boards in states across the country, many of them run by Republicans who came back and said Joe Biden won the election. The statement that may cost Liz Cheney her position as GOP leadership chair, the 2020 presidential election was not stolen. She might lose her job over saying that statement of fact out loud. Also yesterday, CNN was first to report that at a closed-door conference in Georgia, Congresswoman Cheney said this, quote, "We cannot embrace the notion the election is stolen. It's a poison in the bloodstream of our democracy. We cannot whitewash what happened on January 6th or perpetuate Trump's big lie. It is a threat to democracy. What he did on January 6th is a line that cannot be crossed." Two NBC News sources confirmed Cheney's reported comments are in fact accurate. Cheney made the remarks during an off-the-record interview with former House Speaker Paul Ryan at the annual retreat for the conservative think tank American Enterprise Institute. Let's bring in co-founder of Punchbowl News, Anna Palmer, senior columnist for the Daily Beast, Matt Lewis, and national correspondent for the Washington Post, Philip Bump. Good morning to you all. Anna, let me start with you as you cover Congress every day. Is Liz Cheney, in fact, going to lose her job? It certainly sounds like there is a majority push within the Republican conference to oust her.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that she's closer to losing her job probably than she ever has been before. Right now, Congress is out on recess, but I would not be surprised if you see lawmakers in the House Republican Party call for a snap election. And clearly over the last week and a half, we've seen House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy say he is not going to stand in the way of that. I don't think you're going to find any defenders. I think when you look at the House Republican leadership, they feel like she is not the messenger that they want right now. And they're already looking to who could potentially replace her, which we reported on in this morning's newsletter.
You know, Matt Lewis, it's been laughable through the years looking at big spending Republicans who really have been setting record deficits, record debts, defining who a real conservative is and who a real conservative is not. Certainly, these Washington Republicans have been anything but conservative through the years. If you just look at deficits and the debt and how they have wrecked us fiscally. But now they're defining conservatism in a way that people that ran up massive deficits and debts over the past 4 or 5 years now are complaining about deficits and debts and claiming that Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney are insufficiently conservative. I mean, you talk about a personality cult where ideas and ideology just doesn't matter anymore. That is this know-nothing Republican Party, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know, a few years ago, conservatives and Republicans quit caring about really what we considered the left versus the right, or progressivism versus conservatism. And it switched to really populism or nationalism and populism. insiders versus outsiders. And if that's the paradigm, if that's the contrast, then they call people like Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney insiders, and they're the enemy. But look, Joe, I find it so interesting. As you know, there's this classic conservative book in the canon of conservative economic philosophy called The Road to Serfdom, and written by Hayek. And in the book, he says that in a totalitarian regime, the worst get on top. I think he was thinking of like the Soviet Union, but the Republican Party today is a place where the worst get on top. I mean, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene raising $3.2 million in the first quarter. People like Matt Gaetz, who are, as of now, welcomed in polite company, and the Republican Party. And then you have Mitt Romney, like a thoroughly decent conservative guy, getting booed in Utah. And you have Liz Cheney, the Iron Lady, who is actually having the guts to stand up and do something that most of the men in the Republican Party won't do, and just frankly be honest about the big lie. And now she's being drummed out of her position. It's the worst getting on top. The incentives are all perverse. It's obviously a corrupt and dysfunctional organization.
It is Tuesday, the 4th of May of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, a small scant dash. A mere pinch of hot smoked Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always has, and it always will. The spice trade was pretty spicy, and it still is. So much news out there. Where do we start? My gosh. We have rail trestles or overpasses collapsing in Mexico City, killing scores. Talking about infrastructure spending. That could be a harbinger of where we're headed. Or are we already there? I think we are, indeed. So the Republicans have announced through, I guess he's the Grim Reaper still, Moscow Mitch McConnell. They're at the Senate, in his part of the Senate, where democracy goes to die. He still presides over that chamber. Has announced that, no, you think the Republicans are going to side and vote, even one Republican vote, siding with the Democrats? Are you kidding me? That's not how you destroy democracy. So we have, as I have said many, many times, our work cut out for us, don't we? We dare not go to sleep. We dare not ignore this. If you are afraid of a fascist takeover, it's too late. It's too late. We're already there. That's why we continue to resist, even though we have the presidency, kind of control the House, nominally the Senate. If only we could get Manchin and Sinema on board. What Mitch should say is that you're not only never will Democrats receive a Republican vote, but we'll be lucky to get Sinema and Manchin too. Because I don't know why. Holding on to some sort of, tradition of the Senate. Are there any traditions left? I mean, Moscow Mitch McConnell presides over that part of the chamber where democracy goes to die. You're supposed to be polite? No. You punch a Nazi wherever they are. Our problem is that we didn't punch the Nazis. We thought that we could get them to help us construct our intelligence apparatus, and they did. And what is the result of that? Well, the Proud Boys took over a public park in Salem, Oregon, and guess what they did? Well, I'll tell you what they didn't do. They did not get a permit. They just decided to go to Riverfront Park and take it over. And where were the police? Well, there was a police helicopter flying overhead, probably taking pictures of anybody there that wasn't a Proud Boy. Because when citizens, Salem residents, were accosted for merely being at the park with their kids and run off, when they filed a police report and the police came to take the report, the several who had that happen reported that the cops were more concerned about whether the Salem residents had instigated the confrontation with the Proud Boys because, as the Salem residents said, the cops told them they'd never heard of the Proud Boys acting in such a way. Yeah, we have our work cut out for us. If you fear a fascist takeover of the United States, you're too late. It's already here. When I say we need to purge the Nazis from law enforcement and from every part of our government, I am not being hyperbolic. I am being very truthful. We need a purge. You know, we have a rat. And we gotta get rid of those rats. Okay, this is not any kind of Le Carre novel. I wish it was. Oh, May 4th. Yeah, that's right, Star Wars. Everybody's up in arms about Star Wars. Oh, Star Wars Day, Star Wars Day. For me, May 4th is when 4 students at Kent State were murdered by the Stormtrooper National Guard. Oh, I know, they were just citizen soldiers. In a way, I'll just remind folks that for about 6 days or so, maybe a little bit less, there was a Teamster strike in which the National Guard was actually fired upon with live ammunition from overpasses along highways and freeways there. Did they ever fire back? No, they never did, not once. But as soon as they get on a college campus with all those commie students, guess who the enemy is? Putting a flower in a rifle barrel is instigating them. So 4 students killed at Kent State. And let's not forget Jackson State, but, you know, we're talking May 4th now. Jackson State was a different day. But everybody forgets about Jackson State, same thing. Except those students were in their dorm rooms. Not on the commons, the field. Anyway, so those National Guardsmen had pretty much got worn out dealing with the Teamster strike. So they go on Kent State College campus. Initially, what it turned out to be was a bonfire celebration for the football team or some sporting event. And, yeah, it got a little bit out of hand, shall we say. You know, college students are, especially ones that are, like, into sports. And, the National Guard was called in to quell this disturbance because it had morphed from a celebration about sports or football, whatever. I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. But a bonfire had been erected, and I think maybe the ROTC building got scorched. Can't do that. So military called in, fixed bayonets, live ammunition. And those, to a T, when they testified, the National Guardsmen, they were so afraid of those students. The Teamsters actually firing on them with live weapons from overpasses, not a problem. Students with flowers, now that is a scary proposition. Can't have that in America, apparently. Not then, not now, not ever. And so, in their quest to put down this terrible front, this assault of students upon them, they fired across this field live weapon or live ammunition flying through the air hundreds of yards into areas of the campus where students were not even taking part in a demonstration. They were merely walking to class. One of those was a student by the name of Allison Krauss, an innocent. Sure, she was against the war, sure, but she was going to class. She wasn't part of that demonstration. Not physically, at least. Felled by a National Guardsman's bullet, and the National Guard was let off because why? Oh, yeah. Our law enforcement learned well. They were afraid. Afraid. That's all it takes. In the home of the brave, all you need is to have fear, and you'll be absolved of your crimes. If you are in a position of power. Everybody else, to the slammer with you. Yeah. How about the woman in Texas who was, I believe, either out on probation, but she was in a transition between being in incarceration and being free, a halfway house. And she understood that she was able to vote. So she voted. Made a mistake. She was told she could vote, but actually she was not able to vote yet. They threw her ass in jail for 5 years. That's in Texas. Now you got a guy up in Pennsylvania whose wife had died, and he filled out an absentee ballot and had her vote for Trump. He voted for Trump, and then he tried to do the same thing with some other family member. He got a 1-2 year probation, go home, have fun. You made a mistake. It's okay. 5 years for the black lady. Not even a slap on the wrist. For the fascist voting maggot voter. Yeah. Am I being mean? I am sorry. Look where we are. Whatever is happening in Arizona, they think that that's going to be carried with the force of law? They don't care about the law, they make it up. And that, my friends, is not the law. That's warlord BS. No, it's time we all stepped up. When I say punch a Nazi, I don't mean go out and risk your physical health by going out and punch somebody who you think is a Nazi. How about we defund the Nazis? We've done it before. Sued the KKK Nazis with that Metzger guy who killed, whose minions killed the black guy in Portland, Oregon, so many years ago. How about we go after assets? How about using law and order? Well, to have some law and order. Because what we have now is not order. Well, it's not the law, but it sure is a lot of orders. Okay, well, enough of that rant. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, of course, to carry on the theme of GOP intransience, the GOP Insurgency says that Liz Cheney's distractions, they are distractions about the election not being stolen. That is a distraction to the GOP. That has sparked new calls to force her out, on top of the old calls. My. Then on the rest of the menu, Nazi swastikas were scrawled across the Oregon Holocaust Memorial as Jewish Heritage Month begins. The airlines have referred 1,300 unruly passenger reports to the Federal Aviation Authority, and they're going to get in trouble now. And MI6 spy Christopher Steele produced a second raw data file. It's not a dossier, it's a raw data file on Donald Trump for the FBI during Trump's time in office. And I'll tell you right now, something that really bothers me, they always bring up this thing about the Steele dossier as being a P-tape. And now we got the P-tape too. It's not about P-tape or about salacious sexual activity. It is about selling out America. Would you stop, minimizing the threat to our way of life by minimizing it with some salacious sexual activity? It's not about Trump screwing some Russian model. It's about Trump and the fascists in his employ screwing America. Media needs to report more of that, please. And after the break, we move to the chef's table, where a UN Rights Committee expressed concerns about police-related racial violence in Belgium. And a Pakistani journalist group vows to fight for press freedom. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the right of the page, is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. If you would then look across the page near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, there is the link to our Patreon site, and if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, and if you're able to afford to do so, and are able to send us the equivalent of what you might spend on an espresso-type coffee drink once a month, if you could send those funds to us, we are able to stretch those dollars beyond compare. Oh, my! And we have 10 years of experience of doing so. 10 years. That's right. We're celebrating it this year. And I don't know. I'm happy to say happy birthday to us. Happy birthday to us. We've been able to do this because of folks like you and folks that are you. Thank you. Also, thank you to those who have increased their monthly patronage. It has come once again at a very, it's a good time because bills keep going up. How dare they? So thank you for your generosity. What we do is that we take the dollars that you're able to afford and send us our way once a month. We put that together with money that we pull out of our own wallets. And we pay our bills, we fly under the radar, and we fulfill our civic duty as the founders originally intended. And it's more than just, babbling. We want people to vote, all right? And when you vote, your vote is punching a Nazi. All right, thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. Thanks, Tom. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I post the show notes and links diary about 10 minutes before showtime. Get that posted up on Twitter and other social media platforms when they allow me to. Zuckerberg. Zuck is back to his old tricks again. The anti-vaxxers, the pandemic deniers, the general maggot, which I call the good Republicans in the vein of the good Germans of old. Yeah. They're continuing to be able to do their BS. But somehow, right when something is coming down the pike, a lot of liberal voices get silenced on that Facebook platform. Zuckerberg, what are you doing? Anyway, I do post the show notes and links diaries on as many social media platforms as I'm allowed to, and one continuously says, no, you're on suspension for right now, 7 days. Should be up around Saturday, Sunday. Good. If you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. And pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. All right. Speaking of Nazis, we got a lot of them up here in Oregon again. I thought we had defunded their organizations. Well, we should try to do that again. Except now the FBI seems to be wanting to treat the Proud Boys like Whitey Bulger. What's up with that? Bulger? Well, Shane Dixon Kavanaugh from the Oregonian brings us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. At least one person struck the Oregon Holocaust Memorial in southwest Portland's Washington park, scrawling swastikas across the memorial stone wall, city officials said. The vile vandalism, written in white, also included the numbers 1488, a symbol popular among neo-Nazis and other white supremacists. Well, it's just the circle game. Okay, that's what they'll tell you. Oh, that's not a Nazi symbol. That's just the circle game. Yeah, right. Portland and other communities around the U.S. recognize May as Jewish American Heritage Month. Police notified Parks Bureau staff of the anti-Semitic graffiti around 11 a.m. on Sunday. Maintenance crews later managed to remove the graffiti, and a spokesperson added that the vandalism remains under investigation by the police. The damage to the Oregon Holocaust Memorial is heartbreaking, and it's particularly painful that it happened during Jewish American Heritage Month, Mayor Ted Wheeler said in a statement. I denounce hate crimes, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy. Well, good for you. The Portland Police Bureau said yesterday, Monday, that investigators were looking into the vandalism, which also included anti-Semitic tagging on signs and concrete barriers near the park, but no arrests have been made because they're not Antifa. They asked anyone with information about the graffiti, including surveillance footage from the surrounding neighborhood, to contact police. In 2016, someone painted a swastika on the statue of former Portland Mayor Vera Katz, located on the city's East Bank Esplanade. Katz and her Jewish family had fled Nazi Germany when she was a child in the early 1930s. The Oregon Holocaust Memorial was dedicated in 2004. At the end of the memorial wall is a soil vault panel where soil and ash are interred from 6 extermination camps of the Holocaust. Engraved in the granite panels on the back side of the wall are the names of the people who died in the camps, as well as their surviving relatives who live in Oregon and Southwest Washington. Shepherdson of Reuters brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. Federal Aviation Administration, affectionately known as the FAA, said that airlines have referred approximately 1,300 unruly passenger reports since February, and the agency has identified potential violations in about 260 cases. In March, FAA Administrator Steve Dixon said he would indefinitely extend a zero-tolerance policy on unruly air passengers, first imposed in January, and said that airlines had reported hundreds of cases since December, most which involved passengers not wearing masks as required on airlines. The FAA has initiated about 20 enforcement cases and is preparing a number of additional enforcement actions. The U.S. Transportation Security Administration, who we know as the TSA, on Friday extended a federal mandate on wearing face masks on board airplanes and in airports and in other transit modes through September 13th that had been set to expire on May 11th. Dixon said in March the zero-tolerance policy would last until at least as long as the federal transit mask requirements. On Friday, TSA said transportation system operators have reported almost 2,000 passengers for refusing to wear a face mask since the 2nd of February, when the federal requirements took effect. TSA will assess civil penalties if necessary and afford due process to those fined, the agency said. The FAA said last week it proposed civil penalties against 3 passengers for interfering with flight attendants who instructed them to obey cabin crew instruction. Dixon signed the zero-tolerance order, directing the policy after supporters of former U.S. President Donald Trump were disruptive on some flights around the time of the January 6 U.S. Capitol attack. Dixon warned that disruptive passengers could face up to $35,000 in fines and possible jail time. Here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is by the Daily Telegraph UK. Robert Mendick and Lucy Fisher from the Daily Telegraph UK penned this piece, and it comes our way by way of the New Zealand Herald. The former MI6 spy Christopher Steele produced a second dossier. It's not a dossier, it's a raw data file. For the FBI on Donald Trump while he was in the White House. Steele filed a series of intelligence reports to U.S. authorities during the Trump presidency, including information concerning alleged sexual exploits. Well, I wouldn't call them exploits, but it was something about sex. And anyway, who cares? We're talking about selling out America, screwing democracy. All right, let's report that. Anyway, Steele's continued involvement supplying intelligence to the FBI appears to give credibility to his original raw data file. It's not a dossier, which sparked a special counsel investigation by prosecutor Robert Mueller into Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential elections. Steele's original leaked dossier, it's not a dossier, it's a raw data file, detailed allegations of misconduct, conspiracy, and cooperation between Trump's presidential campaign team and Vladimir Putin's government. And then, of course, we have to say it also contained the sensational claim that the Kremlin was in possession of compromising material, including a sex tape of Trump with a prostitute or prostitutes at a hotel in Moscow in 2013. Yeah, get that in there because it minimizes, what was the other part? Collusion, conspiracy, misconduct, and cooperation with Russia. Yeah, okay, they got kompromat on them. Good. The former president has strongly denied the claims made in the Steele dossier, denouncing it as fake news. Sure, of course he did. The emergence of the 35-page dossier, written between June and December of 2016, did not, it appears, signal an end to the former MI6 officer's working relationship with the FBI and continued after Trump's inauguration in January of 2017. Well, when you have a Russian asset in the Oval Office, you might want to keep some tabs on him now, don't you? Yes, you do. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we've curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, fight! Full disclosure, I have never played Mortal Kombat. I knew that it was a top-tier arcade console fighting game while I sucked playing Soul Calibur. What I didn't know until now is that it's become a huge beloved franchise with multiple games, a gajillion characters, and a labyrinthine melodramatic plot. Good guys, bad guys, this guy dies and comes back as this other guy, these guys are related, these guys have beef, it's martial arts and magic and cyborgs, whatever. It's all addressing for the combat which needs to happen because regularly, different dimensions offer up their fight champions to determine who gets to rule. In this new Mortal Kombat movie, a franchise reboot coming out of Australia and backed by Warner Brothers, the champions of Evil Outworld have won 9 times in a row. One more time, and the Elder Gods let soul-sucking boss Shang Tsung move on Earthworld like a steamroller. What's clear here is that first-time feature director Simon McQuoid and first-time feature writer Greg Russo, not a Russo brother, are working with a limited budget and the best of intentions. McQuoid eschews CGI for a lot of cool real-life location shooting, giving the film an old-fashioned 80s feel. He also wanted the fights to have different narrative flavors, which they do, and wanted an R rating, which manifests in a lot of cursing that can feel more performative than organic, and in moments where you say, oh hey, that's a lot of blood. Russo's bold step is to introduce Cole Young, an entirely new character not from the games, as our protagonist. Cole is about protecting his family because formulas work and are thus bankable. Indeed, there's very little else that's new here. In fact, the plot is really the bad news bears. A plucky band of misfits must believe in each other and in themselves to acquire the mojo to beat the bad guy team, who are the reigning champions and are better funded, better skilled, and all-around jerks. Mortal Kombat ain't fabulous. It tries a little too hard to be masculinist and is even a little toxic, but it's a movie for the fans and for those waiting for the next Fast and Furious to come out. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at take2moviereview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Shayla Farzan. Every honeybee colony has its own unique scent, like a fingerprint, and bees use that scent to recognize their nestmates, basically saying, you smell like me, so I'm going to let you into the colony. But here's the mystery. If you transfer a baby bee into a new hive, not only does the colony accept it, but that bee will eventually smell like its adopted nestmates, even though they're not genetically related.
This kind of got us thinking perhaps it's not actually the genetics of the bee, it's actually the genetics of the microbes that live within the bee.
Cassandra Vernier is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Illinois. She knew gut microbes could affect the scent and communication of other animals, like hyenas. So she and her co-authors designed a series of experiments to test whether microbes also change the scent compounds coating the outside of honeybees, known as cuticular hydrocarbons. In one experiment, they fed different gut microbes to newly hatched sister bees. The bees developed distinct microbiomes, and they also produced different cuticular hydrocarbon scents. But on the other hand,
if they were treated with different inoculums, they recognized each other as non-nestmates or intruders, and they attacked each other, usually in the form of biting each other.
In other words, bees from the same colony did not recognize each other when they had different gut microbes. Washington University biology professor and co-author Yehuda Ben-Shahar says the microbes are changing the bees physiologically and controlling their complicated social behaviors. But he adds, this relationship is mutually beneficial for the bacteria and the bees.
The bees depend on these. I mean, they have to have some of these bacteria. So the idea is that you have a system where this relationship serves the biology of both the bacteria and the host, and it gets to a point where it's obligatory.
Being able to distinguish nestmates from invaders is absolutely critical, Ben-Shahar says. Without that ability, bees would be vulnerable to nest parasites and to other bees looking to steal their most precious commodity, honey. And so the entrance fee must be paid, not in dollars, but in cents. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Shayla Farzan.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Colorectal cancer is the #2 cancer killer of men and women in the United States, but it is preventable. Early on, colorectal cancer typically has no symptoms. It starts with a precancerous polyp or abnormal growth in the colon, which can be removed without surgery. Several tests are available to find these polyps, so they can be removed before they turn into cancer. Screening also finds colorectal cancer early when treatment works best. Recommended screening for adults at average risk begins at age 50 and continues until age 75. Learn about screening test options and find out which tests are covered by insurance. Talk to your healthcare provider about when you should be screened and discuss the best tests for you. For more information about colorectal cancer prevention, please visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
For the most accurate health information, visit cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
I'm probably okay to have one more drink before I drive home. I'm probably okay. I open the window to stay alert. Probably okay. I just popped some gum in my mouth.
Step out of the car, please.
I probably made a mistake.
Probably okay isn't okay when it comes to drinking and driving. If you see a warning sign, stop and call a cab, a car, or a friend. Buzzed driving is drunk driving. A message brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
Democracy is dying in Florida.
Listen up. This matters. I'm Louis Black, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute with ACLU attorney Bill Newman.
The Florida legislature has passed a bill that will limit voting by mail. Voting by mail, as the 2020 presidential election proved, is safe and secure and allows millions of people who without it can't vote to vote. So, Florida elected officials have in essence said, never again, we're putting an end to that. And they have. The bill also limits the number of drop boxes, which, again, as the 2020 election proved, are safe and secure and allow people who can't stand in line at a polling place for hours on Election Day to cast a ballot. So, greatly reducing drop boxes prevents eligible voters from voting, which is the effect, and let's be frank, the purpose of this law. The big push in Florida and across the country to torpedo the right to vote is based on no facts, just the specious, demonstrably false claim about fraud in the 2020 election. Voter election officials in Florida call the legislation unnecessary and a travesty. Florida is now a leader in the nationwide voter suppression movement, along with Georgia, Texas, and Iowa, and Michigan and Arizona are not far behind. It's this simple. Voting is the foundation of a representative democracy. If people can't vote, democracy dies. Voting, and therefore democracy, is under grave attack. Right now, today, this very moment.
The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the American Civil Liberties Union because freedom can't defend itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1948. That was the day United Electrical Workers voted to strike at Univis Lens Company in Dayton, Ohio. Univis made safety lenses and instrumental optics. The UE was well established in the area manufacturing plants. Once organized, Univis fought the UE's presence at every chance they could. When the contract expired at the end of April, Univis refused to negotiate. First came the injunctions limiting picketing. This was followed by a vigorous decertification campaign. Foremen made intimidating personal visits to workers' homes, offering raises and personal loans to coerce no votes. When the UE lost the election in late July, the company announced wage increases for returning workers and firings for the remaining strikers. Workers stuck together and the strike continued. By the 26th, police swamped the picket lines, beating top UE organizers and arresting hundreds. 2 days later, the company offered a settlement for all but 11 strikers. The members refused. Then, the House Un-American Activities Committee came to town to begin a red-baiting inquisition of the UE district. The city's unions were outraged at the beatings and arrests. They walked off their jobs to bolster the picket lines and were met with tear gas. Governor Herbert called in the National Guard on August 2nd. 1,500 troops rolled into town in Sherman tanks with machine guns trained on the strikers. Scabs were escorted through plant gates between rows of fixed bayonets. Area residents, furious at the virtual martial law, flooded the governor with angry protests until troops were finally withdrawn. The strike ended in victory, with workers winning most of their demands. All but 5 were reinstated, and by the following April, the NLRB voided the decertification election. Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently, 48 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the mid to upper 70s. A mix of clouds and sun throughout the day, winds out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour, partly cloudy skies overnight with lows in the upper 40s, winds continuing out of the north at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the upper 80s. Winds out of the northeast will be shifting to the west-northwest at 10 to 15 miles per hour later in the day tomorrow. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon have been updated. We now stand at 10,536 confirmed cases, and our deceased have gone up again and now stand at 131. Grass pollen is rated high here in Rogue River proper. The air quality index, though, for the region is good at 26 parts per million, but that daytime UV index is very high at 8. Take care and precautions. Barometric pressure is rising at 30.2 inches. Visibility is up to 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 88%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. And everybody knows that is the Weather Underground. London is 56 and partly cloudy. Paris is 60 and cloudy. Rome is 60 degrees with showers in the vicinity. Kyiv is 55 degrees and fair. Kabul is 60 and mostly cloudy. Hong Kong is 72 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 65 and fair. Sydney, Australia is 60 degrees with rain. San Francisco, California is 58 and sunny. And New York is 60 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd crowdsources from around the world. Anonymous staff at the Associated Press brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A UN Rights Committee expressed concerns about police-related racial violence in Belgium and asked the country to allow thorough investigations of the alleged incidents. The UN Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination, which is made of 18 independent experts, also called for more ethnic diversity in the country's police force. A top Belgian police official stepped
aside last year after the emergence of a 2018 video showing violent treatment of a Slovak citizen by police officers at a Belgian airport. The man, who was in distress, later died. More recently, Belgian prosecutors have launched a probe following the death of a 23-year-old black man who was detained by police. The committee said in a statement that experts were worried by reports of an increase of police violence during the COVID-19 pandemic and recent anti-racism demonstrations, persistent racial profiling, and hate speech. The panel recommended that Belgian authorities legislate an explicit prohibition of racial profiling and establish an independent system for dealing with complaints related to racial profiling.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Munir Ahmed of the Associated Press brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The media is facing growing censorship, attacks and harassment in Pakistan that are threatening freedom of the press, a committee of journalists said yesterday, Monday. The government said there are no curbs on journalists in the country. But Pakistan has long been a dangerous place for journalists. There were 148 documented attacks or violations against a journalist in Pakistan from May of 2020 to April of 2021, an increase over previous years, according to The Dawn, the country's English-language newspaper. It said these incidents included 6 murders, 7 attempted assassinations, 5 kidnappings, 25 arrests or detentions of journalists, 15 assaults, and 27 legal cases registered against journalists. Just remember, the government said there are no curbs on journalists in Pakistan. In an editorial marking World Press Freedom Day, the press said the space for journalists in Pakistan was shrinking, and a media in chains cannot hold the powerful to account and serve public interest as it is meant to do, the editorial said. Pakistan has long been a deadly place for journalists. In 2020, it ranked 9th on the Committee to Protect Journalists' annual Globe Impunity Index, which assesses countries where journalists are murdered regularly and their killers go free. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks, and we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théères, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Coeur. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs sous la pluie d'un novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin l'âge tendre, nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum, 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 dans mon jardin d'hiver.